Welcome to the Think Small podcast, hypergrowth for small businesses. So, what's slowing you down?
Welcome back to the Think Small podcast. I'm excited today. My guest is Benny Calderone with the Zoomies Group. We had a conversation a couple of weeks back, and I love how the group got its name. It's a great story. But welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
Great, Alex. I'm super happy to be here. Excited to connect with you again.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this one. Benny, why don't we just dive right in? Tell me a little bit about the company. Tell me about what you guys do for the listeners out there and how you got your start.
Happy to. I think starting quickly at the beginning is the best way to approach it. I've been in the consumer packaging space known as FMCG, fast-moving consumer goods, for the better part of 28 years. I started my career in a typical entry-level sales, customer service type role. I showed up for my first job, and they put me in the sample room and forgot about me for 2 months. Within a couple of years, I had doubled my salary in commission, and I was off and running in a career that I never really expected or anticipated, which is in the beauty, personal care, fast moving consumer goods. So the types of products you'll see on the shelves, whether it's at Walmart or duty free in an airport, products that consumers interact with every day. And I've had a great career journey, Alex. It's taking me all over the world through a variety of companies, focused on packaging for plastics, for skincare and fragrance bottles and dispensing pumps on some of the most high-end fragrance available in the market, millions upon millions of pieces, manufacturing firms in Asia, Europe, Mexico, and of course, some of my favorite here in North America, where we can deliver products quickly. So through my personal journey, I've moved through roles of sales and marketing director up into VP of sales, ultimately ending as a chief commercial officer within a startup company for a European entity, but all sorts of materials and packaging mediums along the way over this career. And it's been a lot of fun and given me great exposure to different business structures, family owned, private equity for a number of years, publicly traded as well. So that experience has brought me to the Zoomies Group that I started about 2 years ago.
Yeah, I think on our original prep call, you shared a story about how it was kind of your mom that facilitated the original jump start, right? Was kind of saw you I don't know if you're hanging out and she was worried about you getting your career started or something, and she kind of meddled with it and was like, hey, you're going to this interview, let's go get a suit. And that jump started your career and took you all over the world, which is really, really quite a cool start.
Yeah, great memory, Alex, and God bless my mom and all the moms out there, right? It's they shape our world in so many ways. So yeah, I had a job through a family friend. He introduced me through a sort of wacky lunch meeting that I attended to a business owner. I didn't really say much. I was a 20-something-year-old kid, and 2 weeks later, that business owner had an opportunity and wanted to hire me. So he reached out to the friend of the family that I was working for, and he approached me and said, hey, this is a great opportunity. And I kind of said, no, I have a job with you. I'm going to do some other things. I was 20 years old and the world was answering to me in my own mind at that time. So what he did was he picked up the phone and called my mom, being a family friend, and said, this is an opportunity Benny needs to take. This is a great company. And so I come home that day, and your recollection of the story was right. And she basically said, come on, let's go. We have to go to Macy's. And I said, well, why are we going to Macy's? And she said, you need a suit. You have a job interview next week, and you're probably going to start this job. And I said, Mom, but, and she said, no, but let's go. And that set in motion a career that I probably would have never imagined and never anticipated, and knock on wood, has been exceptionally beneficial and financially worthwhile on on so many levels. So thank God for my mom, and thank
Yeah.
God for all the moms out there.
It's so funny how sometimes a career, I don't want to say falls in your lap, right? Like you obviously work very hard to get to where you end up, right? But it's almost like the path was always there. It was just like when you're looking back at it, right? Like I think for myself, I'm an employee benefits producer, and I think maybe 6 years ago, I got a call from a recruiter, and they were like, "Hey, I'd love to, have a conversation with you about, a sales role in insurance." And I said, "Oh, I appreciate that so much." I went maybe 2 or 3 interviews, and I said, after learning more, I'm really not interested. It sounds boring. And then like maybe 6 months later, there was an opportunity that I couldn't refuse, ended up into this role, and I've thoroughly enjoyed the last half decade being in insurance. So it's just funny how it goes.
It's amazing how sometimes it just plays out. And the saying is the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step, and
Yeah.
crossing through that threshold. And then through my career, in sales and sales leadership, it really does come down to taking that first step, walking through that door, or knocking it down, kicking that door down to get to where you need to be. And it could lead you to some incredible places. And it really is beneficial once you open yourself up to it. And maybe you can say, accept that journey or drive that journey, whatever it is in each individual's career or life. But sometimes we do find ourselves in very lucky situations, and it's that combination of opportunity and preparation that takes us far.
Yeah. So what brought you to the Zoomies Group? Like, how did that come about, right? You're working, you have a career in corporate America in high level positions, and then you decided to go out on your own. How does that happen?
Yeah, pretty much. So I've always had that entrepreneurial pull, that draw, and perhaps any of the listeners that are in sales, you kind of feel that you are driving your own destiny in sales. And I've loved my career in sales, and I have 2 children that are both in college, and I kind of felt the time was right. And I've traveled this journey. I've been in sales for a long time. And if we think back through world events over the last 25 or 27 years, we encompass everything from 9/11 to housing bubble and the dot-com bubble, and most recently and painfully, the COVID pandemic. And through all of these world events, I continued to work. I continued to drive sales forward. Of course, some years were more difficult. And in the end, I came to the conclusion that all of these experiences have helped me become who I am. And I could now turn that into helping other people. So I got to sort of the pinnacle of the corporate career in sales, the chief growth officer, the chief commercial officer, the kid who started in customer service. And it was through a variety of companies. It wasn't through one company. As I mentioned a few moments ago, it was different companies in different regions with different products, but all in the same category. And I just couldn't resist the draw of being an entrepreneur and both helping other people, through mentoring or being on their journey. And of course, Alex, it was the realization that I can monetize these experiences. I can create opportunity that I was just walking through, whether it was somebody saying, "Hey, can you help me with this?" And I'd point them in the right direction. And 6 months later, they'd say, "Oh my God, that was incredible. If it wasn't for that conversation or if it wasn't for that introduction." So it was that realization. Of course, I've also come to the realization you can't simply monetize everything. That's just not being a good human being. I don't want to make a dollar on every conversation, but it was the putting the work forward to help other businesses grow, and then being part of that with them would lead to financial benefit for me. And the name Zoomies is literally what people know it. It's that sort of frenetic, high energy pace. If you have a dog, if you're an animal lover and you take your dog to the beach, or you're in the park, or the dog run in the backyard, and you take the dog off the leash and they're free and they're having fun and they're just running and they're doing things and chasing things and coming back and just enjoying life. I sort of feel that that embodies who I am. I'm in my Zoomies era, to steal a little bit from the Taylor Swift type definition, where I'm free. That sort of corporate, element is off of me, and I'm free to pursue opportunities and partnerships and collaboration and clients that I want to work with, and equally to be able to say no to opportunities that I don't feel are a good fit. So when I was coming up with the name, Zoomies kind of became this tongue in cheek when I first formed my LLC. And anybody who's thinking about getting on the entrepreneurial journey, I really suggest and recommend you speak with your financial advisor or your accountant and create a pathway through an LLC or some other function or foundational work that you can start to have a way to basically send and receive money. That opens the door because it allows you to say, I can do this and get paid for it, and here's how I'm going to get paid for it, or set up a bank account through that entity, or get a business credit card. So it really becomes a foundational step, in my opinion, in the entrepreneurial journey. But back to the Zoomies, the name really embodies who I am, this sort of fun, not taking myself too seriously, frantic pace, going after what I want to do and creating a culture that embodies that. So that's where the name comes from. And I set the name in motion a couple of years ago, and then found myself in an opportunity to speak to the people I was working with and saying, this is what I think I'm going to pursue. And I parted on very good terms with them, and here I am, a few years into the journey, loving life, and that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, there are a couple of things that you said that kind of stood out to me, and I think back in I've had a career now, 10, 12 years, maybe longer, in sales. I've been in. Sometimes you think like, oh, it's only 10 years, and then you realize it's actually like 17 years. I don't know. It feels like time goes quick, right? But I think there was a time in my mid to late 20s where it was like the worst days of sales, right? Like, and the worst day in sales will have you, reconsidering everything, every life choice that brought you to that moment. You're like, oh, why am I in sales, right? And I used to joke and say I would get out of sales, but I have no hard skills, right? Like I'm not trained in, writing script or writing, software. I'm not, a science background, but being in sales as long as I have been now, and where I'm at in my mid 30s, and you probably, and this is what I think your realization as well is, like, down the line, you're tapping into so many different departments, right? Whether it's logistics and supply chain, whether it's insurance, if it's data analytics, if it's marketing, the salesperson is the definition of, jack of all trades, master of none, right? And that becomes exceptionally useful as you transition into a consulting role, right?
Spot on, Alex. It gives you, and the longer you're in the career, you're working with people, and it gives definition to the term cross-functional. You're working in human resources, you're hiring or unfortunately firing people, you're working with finance and profit and loss and supply chain and logistics. I mentioned COVID a few moments ago. We were importing products from China, and the cost of a freight container from Shanghai to Los Angeles within the span of 30 days went from $1,500 to $15,000, and suddenly that becomes an emphasis. So it does give you all of those experiences, and that's what I use now to help my clients, and those experiences to say that I've been through it, and the sky is not falling. Something you mentioned a few moments ago, like the worst day in sales. Through my experience, I've come to realize a bad day in sales is sort of like a tropical rainstorm in Florida, where you can say, we're supposed to go to Disney World today, but the forecast is rain, so we're not going to do that. And then 20 minutes later, the sun is beating and it's shiny, and you're running to catch the bus or the train or the monorail to Disney World. And sales is sort of like that. Your worst day is never really a bad day. It's usually a bad 15 minutes, and then
Sure.
something changes, whether you describe it as the roller coaster of sales or whatever it is. And this is also something I've tried to teach my children. They come home and say, it was the worst day ever. And I'd say, was it really the worst day, or was it a bad hour of the day? Was it a bad 15 minutes? And we're going to have dinner tonight and we're home together, so it's not really a bad day. I mean, look, we've all lost clients. We've all been told no. We've lost big projects, but equally, hopefully we've won the big ones. We've gained the big ones. We've built the trust. And sometimes in the world of sales and entrepreneurial, all of that happens in the same day, and Alex, sometimes in the same hour. That's what I've come to realize in this entrepreneurial journey, and it's quite amazing. And I teach business owners and sales teams about that, and about the resiliency that you need to have to go forward and grow.
Yeah. That's a great perspective. I think I can definitely identify with that, right? Where it's like, I think I was just talking with a colleague of mine, because it's a slow month, right? In June, there's a lot of people out on vacations, and end of the school year ending, or rather the school year ending. So it's been tough to get people on the phone and kind of get the engine turning. And I told my colleague, I'm like, I'm just ready for like a dopamine hit. Like I need a little win, just a little win to get me through the end of the start of this slow season. Would be great. But then I end up like pivoting, right, to do more networking and more like lunches with, my centers of influence, my COIs, right, and that kind of refills my sales, pool, right, like diversifying the activity and helps with that kind of lag or that slow part of the sales cycle. So
it certainly takes that, and it certainly takes those small wins. Alex, are you a golfer? Do you ever play golf by any chance?
I'm actually picking it up because I realized I'm in insurance, and if you're in insurance and you don't golf, then you're not really in insurance. That's a joke I've been telling. So, but yeah, I recently picked it up, and I'm doing all right. Probably about like a 20 handicap.
All right, it's pretty good. So of course, from the networking aspect, but from metaphorically, what you're describing is almost like a round of golf or a hole where you get up on that tee box and you just want to crush it. You want that 220-yard drive, and everybody says there's nothing better than a long walk with a putter in your hand. And then you get to the next hole and it doesn't quite go that way, but you course correct and you start to realize a lot of small wins, or maybe in golf, I don't want to say a lot, but a few small hits in the right direction get you to where you want to be. Interspersed with that big, hit, that big grand slam, and then suddenly you leave the course and you feel victorious. I learned this by playing golf with my dad, because he's now 91 years old, but I remember playing golf with him, and I'd get up and I'd have that big Bertha driver, and I just want to wind it up and crack that, that grand slam. And he would just get up on the tee box without a care in the world, and boom, and he'd hit it, and 120 yards, 150 yards right down the middle. And I'm trying to crush it, and I'm off in the woods, left, right. And next thing you know, I'm a beginner, and I'm trying to hole out with 7 strokes, and he's hit the par. And you realize, 4 easy shots got him where he needed to be. And again, metaphorically, business is like that. We do want that hit. We want that big drive. We want that home run. But sometimes it's a series of small wins that we can sustain on and drive us and will help carry us through those big hits. And those are the things you learn in the entrepreneurial and even in the sales specific journey.
I think it speaks a lot to consistency as well, right? Consistency is key, always has been. And the older I get, the more experience I get, the more I realize it's just about. My dad used to say, like, as long as you show up, that's half the battle. Just showing up,
The battle.
right?
And showing up on time. And we all know it doesn't cost anything to be on time and be ready to go and do those things. It's so important in business, in for the young folks on their career journey. It's what I did. And sometimes it was hard. It was hard on a Monday morning, but I did it. And I showed up and I gave everything I could along the way, and that's what led to those small wins in my career. The jump from sales manager to sales director, or sales director to vice president, and so on. I showed up and I kept coming back. Maybe I was a glutton for punishment, Alex, but
Yeah.
I kept coming back for more. As my family grew, the responsibility grew. So coming back for more wasn't just because I wanted to. It was out of necessity.
Yeah.
You have a mortgage, a family, whatever it may be in your life, in your career, that makes you come back, but show up and give it your all.
Yeah.
I think that just this week we saw the Knicks, right, down 29. They just kept showing up relentless, and
Yeah.
and here they are 3 games ahead by 1 point with 1.2 seconds left. They never quit. They never stopped showing up in that game as a team, as individuals. And regardless of the outcome of this series, I'm a New Yorker, so go New York, go Knicks. But people will be talking about that resiliency, that drive, that desire to win for generations. Of course, it'll be made all the better if they walk off with the championship and if they do it with the trophy. But sometimes things survive even the final result, and let it teach all the fans out there and everybody listening. You just don't stop. Show up and give it your all and drive it forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Benny, and this is kind of like a natural transition. We talk about drive and ambition and all of that. So where is the Zoomies Group going? Where do you see it in the next maybe 2 to 5 years?
That's a great question. I'm enjoying the ride, and one of the things about being a consultant or a fractional executive is your time is precious, and you really have to learn to manage it because you can't have more. So I started to realize that my ability to scale and grow is limited by my time. And so I'm looking at how do I pivot this business beyond me and a small sort of group to grow it. It's being built around everything you and I have been talking about, my experience, the culture I want to create, my ability to work and mentor and develop. And now I'm looking at it saying, how can I teach others to do that? How can I build an ecosystem around the path that I'm learning? What have I had as struggles? Sharing with you and the listeners a few moments ago, LLC. I knew I needed to set up an LLC. I didn't realize how critical that would become in creating opportunities and now having a way to, as I said, receive money. Somebody would say, hey, this is great. We'd love to bring you on. Can you fill out a W-9 and send it to us? Of course, through my business experience, I knew how to do that, but I realized I would not have been able to do that with this small foundational step. So now scaling my business, teaching others to grow themselves while growing my business with them and through them is really going to be a big part of the next step in the trajectory of the business, because I would love to create a network of colleagues that share this experience, that are looking for the next pathway on their journey.
I appreciate that, and so it's an exciting time for you as you're growing the organization. I love that you're capitalizing on your career of experience, and it seems like you're offering a really fantastic consultative service. It kind of brings me to our sort of capstone question about what's slowing you down.
It's not only what's slowing me down, it's what's keeping me up at night is the growth, right? And any entrepreneur will tell you, as you build a self-sustaining business, what happens if, what is the worst case scenario? So not only does it inhibit growth, maybe it inhibits income. And so time restrictions, time limitations slow me down. The ability to give my clients just an exceptional level of service that I know I need to deliver and they expect from me, while scaling the business, that slows me down. And slowing down, it comes in a few ways. We have to pump the brakes intentionally because exponential dynamic growth feels, or you think it's incredible, but at the same time something is going to give, whether that's personal life or professional life. Alex, I worked for over 10 years in sales for companies or entities that were owned by private equities in a global environment. There were times that I started my day at 5 a.m. working with colleagues or clients in Europe, and I finished my day at 11 p.m. at night or 10 p.m. at night with clients and colleagues in Asia that were starting their next day. And that really wears thin. It took its toll on my health, on my life, on my personal weight, and things like that, on my family. So growth is good. Exponential growth feels great, but we have to slow down, intentionally pump the brakes. And then what slows us down beyond our control as an entrepreneur is that the time restrictions to build the business. I will work the 18-hour, the 15-hour days to get the job done. I don't necessarily want to do it 5, 6, 7 days a week. So how do I scale the business? How do I grow the business in a measured, strategic, methodical way that also allows others to grow financially? Because you do want to give back and want to make other people successful within my sphere of influence. It's very important to me to do that.
Yeah. It feels like the goal here is to be deliberate and selective about the clients that you onboard, right?
I love that. I'm going to quote that. Deliberate and selective. You could not have summed it up any better.
Yeah, there's a phrase that I've used a number of times in my own sales career is like, I would love your business, but I don't need your business, right? And it's a way of me kind of detaching, right? Letting my client know that I'm a person too. I have, where you said earlier in the podcast around, showing up on that Monday morning. And I love Monday mornings. Personally, I'm a big Monday morning guy. I love it. I'm very excited to get the work week going. The hardest part for me, and this is another thing that you kind of talked about, is the Thursday night at 8:30, right? That one is the killer. And then I'm still showing up to that one, right? Like we're still at that, COI dinner or that networking event, trying to get, out there and meet more people. But when you have those, I have two little ones, a 5 and 2.5-year-old, and on a Friday morning when I'm getting ready to go to work after having been out on Thursday night, and they're like, where are you going? I'm like, I'm going to work. And it's tough. So I'm planting the seeds now, so that way, 5 years from now, they can go, you're working remote today, you're working from home, or you can be home tonight early. Yeah, I'll be home. I'll be home early tonight.
For sure. And Alex, life is about a series of stages, whether it's professional stage. Like I love the Monday morning. Since I've become an entrepreneur and I'm building my business, man, I can't wait. There's no such thing for me as the Sunday night gloomies.
No way.
I'm ready to go. I'm intentionally looking at my calendar or embracing it. But there was a stage where, man, that Monday morning was coming way too fast and I was dragging. And the same thing with children. You're in the young child stage, and it's just magic every day, every moment, and embrace it and enjoy it. The next stage will prove differently for them and for you, and professionally and personally. As you look back, it is all about those stages, and thankfully you're in a great position to say, I love Monday mornings. I'm invigorated, I'm energized, and I'm ready to start my day, my week. I feel the same, but I'm sure there are people out there that are like, oh no, it's another Monday morning, and why can't it be a 3-day weekend every week, and so on. But those are the different stages we go through, and those are what make us, or in certain situations, our children, who they are. And what you're giving your children with that energy and that ready to go is actually a gift that will help them many stages down the line.
Let's say that there's a CEO or COO or somebody out there that's listening to this podcast that is kind of dreading their Monday morning, and they need some consultation from Benny and the Zoomies Group to get those Mondays looking a little bit more enjoyable. How would they get in touch with you? How do they find out more about the Zoomies Group?
It's fantastic. So we just finished our website, super proud, www.thezoomiesgroupllc.com. There it shows you the services we offer, some of the ways we work with different clients, a little bit of the history of the Zoomies Group, the name of how we arrived at that name, and then my personal professional background. I'm here based in New York. I'm always eager to speak with new clients and have open conversations with potential clients. I'm very happy to give a free introduction consultation, some free advice. As I said, I've learned how to monetize what I do, but also how to give back and accept that you don't need to monetize everything to build a relationship and to build a network. And if you're selling a product, there's really no expectation that you're going to get a purchase order or close the deal after the first handshake or the first hello. It's a development, it's a series, it's relationship building. And I welcome the opportunity to invest that time with new prospective clients, or maybe even old friends that are thinking about how can we collaborate. So you can visit our website. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm a big guy on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn as the digital world of a modern Rolodex. So you can find me there, Benny Calderone. And I would welcome the opportunity to connect with listeners of the show. I think you guys do a great thing. I've been a fan for a while. So when you guys approached me, it was an easy yes to come on and spend this time with you.
Benny, thank you so much. Again, I really do appreciate you being a guest today. And I thoroughly enjoy our conversation. It's been really great.
Thanks, Alex. Have a great weekend ahead. It's warm weather here in the Northeast. Enjoy your amazing family, and keep smiling as you approach those Monday mornings. It's going to take you right where you need to be in life.
All right. Take care. Enjoy.
Thank you.
Bye.
Welcome to the Think Small podcast, hypergrowth for small businesses. So, what's slowing you down?